Have you ever found yourself trapped in a relationship where love hurts more than it heals? Where every word you say feels like walking on a minefield? Where silence grows louder than affection, and affection becomes a weapon instead of comfort? Toxic relationships aren't built overnight. They're slow poison. And by the time you realize something is deeply wrong, the damage has already crept into your nervous system, your self-worth, and your perception of what love should feel like. Psychologically, toxic relationships are not just about arguments, jealousy, or controlling behavior. They're about identity erosion. Over time, the other person doesn't just occupy space in your life, they occupy space in your mind. They rewire how you think, how you see yourself, and how you relate to the world. You start to question your memories, your intentions, even your sanity. This isn't random. It's psychological manipulation, and in many cases, it's unconscious on both ends. People often wonder why someone stays in a toxic relationship. The real question is, why wouldn't they, if their brain has been conditioned to believe pain equals love? Many toxic dynamics trigger trauma bonding, a cycle of intermittent reinforcement that confuses the mind and hijacks emotional regulation. One moment you're punished, the next you're rewarded. This hot and cold behavior keeps you hooked like a gambler, addicted to the rush of unpredictable outcomes. At the center of many toxic relationships is a fear, not of the other person, but of abandonment. Somewhere deep in the subconscious, there's a voice that whispers, "If they leave, I am nothing." That fear often stems from childhood wounds, being emotionally neglected, invalidated, or taught to equate self-worth with external approval. Toxic relationships exploit that fear. They feed off it. When you grow up in dysfunction, chaos starts to feel like home. So when you meet someone who triggers your wounds but also gives you fleeting moments of euphoria, your brain labels it as love. But it's not love, it's survival. It's your nervous system trying to recreate the chaos it was trained to navigate. And this is what most people don't understand. People don't stay in toxic relationships because they're weak, but because their trauma tells them it's familiar. Gaslighting is one of the most dangerous elements of toxicity. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's subtle, a raised eyebrow, a sarcastic tone, a twisted version of events. The goal isn't to win the argument. The goal is to make you doubt your reality. Over time, you begin to apologize for things you didn't do. You begin to censor your truth. You begin to perform a version of yourself that's acceptable to them, but unrecognizable to you. And what's even darker is that the toxicity doesn't always come from hatred. It often comes wrapped in affection, concern, and charm. That's what makes it so confusing. One day they call you the love of their life. The next, they make you feel like a burden. This emotional instability isn't a flaw. It's a control mechanism. When someone keeps shifting between love and cruelty, you lose your emotional balance. And in trying to regain it, you become dependent on the very person who's making you lose it. This dependence is not just emotional, it's biochemical. Studies show that toxic relationships activate the same reward pathways in the brain as substances like cocaine. That's why breaking free isn't just a decision. It's a withdrawal. Your brain is literally addicted to the chaos, to the spikes of adrenaline, to the dopamine that comes after conflict. Healing from this isn't just about walking away, it's about rewiring your entire nervous system. And yet, the most terrifying part of toxic relationships isn't the other person. It's the version of yourself that you become. You start betraying yourself to keep the peace. You become quiet when you want to scream. You stay when you want to leave. You shrink so they can feel bigger. And with every compromise, you lose a piece of yourself. Until one day, you don't recognize who's looking back in the mirror. That's the psychology of toxicity. It doesn't just steal your happiness, it steals your identity. It convinces you that love means tolerating pain, that boundaries are selfish, that respect must be earned through suffering. And once that belief sets in, you stop asking for what you deserve. You start believing that this is the best you can get. But here's the truth. They don't change. The cycle doesn't end. You're not the exception who's going to fix them. You're the fuel they use to maintain the illusion of power. And the longer you stay, the deeper the illusion gets. Toxic relationships don't break you all at once. They wear you down slowly. Like waves crashing on stone, they erode your essence until you forget you were ever whole. Some people justify staying with, but they love me. Love is not justification. Abuse wrapped in love is still abuse. Manipulation wrapped in compliments is still control. What we call love in toxic relationships is often a desperate attachment to something that feels safe because it's familiar, even when it hurts. And society doesn't help. We romanticize obsession. We glorify jealousy. We call possessiveness passion, but none of that is love. Love doesn't shrink you. It doesn't punish you for expressing pain. It doesn't thrive on fear or keep score. Real love empowers. It nurtures. It sees you, not just when you're easy to love, but especially when you're not. If you've been in a toxic relationship, you know how hard it is to unlearn the damage. You flinch when someone raises their voice. You apologize too much. You seek validation like oxygen. These are not your flaws. These are survival mechanisms. But healing begins when you stop trying to make sense of their behavior and start focusing on yours. Why did you tolerate that? Why did you keep going back? The answers don't lie in blaming yourself, but in understanding the wounds that made you stay. And once you understand those wounds, you can begin to heal them. That means learning to sit with your loneliness instead of filling it with chaos. It means setting boundaries and watching who respects them. It means realizing that love should feel like peace, not confusion. It means choosing yourself, even when it's the hardest thing to do. Healing from a toxic relationship is not just about letting go of them. It's about reclaiming parts of yourself you forgot existed. The part that used to laugh without permission. The part that spoke without fear. The part that knew its worth without needing proof. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the most painful chapter of your life taught you something priceless. Not how to be loved, but how to never accept anything less than love again. That's the psychology of toxic relationships. It's not just about them. It's about what we allow, what we normalize, and what we believe we deserve. And once you shift that belief, the entire pattern breaks. You stop looking for chaos, you start seeking peace, you stop surviving love, and you start living it.